will have to pay for years. We'll be paying for him. And I said to him, listen, there's no inflation. He says, but maybe there'll be some. That's true. I said, if there is some, what you do is raise the rate. I'm okay with that. You raise the rate in 2 years from now or in a year from now. But because the rate's high, we have to pay more for debt. It's pretty equal. In other words, if it's 4%, it's 4%. If you drop it a point, you'll pay 3%. So it's fairly equal, not necessarily, but fairly equal. So we're going to end up paying maybe 2 points or 3 points more. 3 points would be about $900 billion a year because of this very average mentally person. He's an average mentally person. I'd say low in terms of what he does, low IQ for what he does, okay? Wait, so instead of paying $900 billion, we don't want to pay 900 just because he doesn't want to lower the rate. I said, if there's inflation in 2 years or 3 years or 1 year from now, you raise the rate and you take care of the inflation, among other things. But he's probably a very political guy, I guess. I don't know. I think he's a very stupid person, actually. All right, one more. Let's go.
So, as we're coming closer to July, I wanted to kind of give an opinion about the Fed chair, right? We all suffering over these high rates, right? Me in particular, but it doesn't matter. And Jerome Powell seems to be, he's fitting the name that Donald Trump labeled him too late, right? Because if you look back at how he carried himself during the Biden administration, he wasn't as, I will say, forceful as he is with Trump. When Trump came into office and talked about leveraging tariffs, I think especially during April, I think that was when he did the most attacks on Trump. He talked about how how tariffs are inflationary as if it was a given fact. And then 2 months later, proven wrong. February, proven wrong. March, proven wrong. April, proven wrong. May, hit his number. Hey, we want to see inflation consistently at 2%. Month over month. Trump delivered that 4 months in a row because we don't count January. January was the transition period from Biden to Trump. I don't count January. So from February all the way to June of 26, Trump has hit the mark. And now you see during the NATO meeting, Trump was calling him to cut the rates. You're making us pay more for no reason. For what? And this goes into the idea that Jerome Powell is being political. He's being passively political here. And the reason I'm backing up my statement here is I already know the liberal bias in the economic institutions. They teach you stuff from these liberal economics theorists, the modern monetary theory. That's a very liberal kind of idea of the economy. They don't teach you anything about the conservative economists like Thomas Sowell, Milton Friedman. They don't teach economic majors, these guys, philosophy on the economy. And this is why it's so hard for them to see how tariffs aren't inflationary. Tariffs create inefficiencies. Maybe you got me there, but it doesn't inherently create inflation, because if you believe that tariffs inherently breeds inflation, then you must also admit that taxes inherently breeds inflation. Democrats, what you got to say now? Because that's all tariffs are. Taxes on imported goods. That's what a tariff is. And you're saying that's inflationary? So increasing taxes on people is inflationary. And I don't understand. And there's this politicization that's going on in our country right now where people interpret their sentiments about the economy based on their political affiliation. If you're a liberal, you believe the economy is falling out of the sky. And if you're conservative, you understand and you're more, I guess, not going to panic over the news of possible inflation. And I'll tell you an example of this. Why? Because here's a timeline of the economy in the beginning of Trump's administration all the way to the ups and downs. Like, this is why I'm a long-term investor, and this is why I don't day trade. Time in the market beats timing the market. Let's take a look at this chart.
We're just minutes away from the closing bell on Wall Street, and the S&P 500 closed yesterday on the cusp of a record high. Right now, kind of flatlining, down just a teensy-weensy bit. CNN's Vanessa Yurkevich joins us now with more. Vanessa, this is really impressive given where the market was not that long ago.
Yeah, really a remarkable story on Wall Street. We've been watching the S&P very closely all day as it has been flirting with a new record, the last one set back in February. But it is remarkable because at the low of the S&P, it had shed $9.8 trillion in April, almost entering bear market territory. And it's nearly now recovered all of its losses. And just look at the markets. You see the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ on your screen. That dramatic V-shaped drop and then recovery. I was talking to a chief investment strategist, Sam Stovall of CFRA, who told me that usually it takes about 4 months for markets to enter the low and then another 4 months for a recovery to get back to even. That happened in half the time. So it really is remarkable. And essentially investors, what they have seen is that after the 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs and after the tariff rates on China were reduced from 145% to 30%, they really believe that the fear of a recession was taken off the table and that maybe some of these tariffs had more bark than bite. Also, Boris, just recently, the conflict in the Middle East between Iran and Israel, well, what happened over the weekend was that the U.S. took out nuclear sites in Iran. And so Wall Street woke up Monday morning and they were relieved. Investors were relieved. So you saw a little bit of a relief rally happening today. But we're watching down to the last minute to see if the S&P will hit a new record today, Boris.
So you saw the chart, right? And, little spin job. They say, investors thought Trump's tariffs was more bark than bite. Well, I don't need that in my news. See, and this is where, I call this stuff out because I don't need that in my news. Just tell me, just inform me. You don't need to give me any kind of filter, right? And that's what she tried to do. Investors thought Trump's tariff. Trump still rose tariffs. China's tariffs was 20%, if I remember correctly. It's still higher than what it was before he got into office. What are you talking about? And the market adjusts with him increasing tariffs. Trump effectively increased tariffs, and the economy is about to hit its all-time high. Like, make it make sense. These people are trying to give you a perception as if, investors see through Donald Trump's bluff, and this is why the economy is high. No, they understand, tariffs may not be as inflationary as the media and these liberal economists made it out to be. And they're trying to spin it to mean something else. I'm tired of the ridiculousness. And I think this is where people get tired of dishonest objectivity. And that's what the CNN anchor and CNN and the legacy media's credibility, this is why it's in the dump. Because many people know these people are dishonestly objective. I'd rather them be honestly biased than being dishonestly objective. Because this is dishonest objectivity here. These people ain't looking at the data. They're looking at a conclusion, and they're trying to find data to match the conclusion. This is what increased tariffs. Look, they don't cry about egg prices no more. They don't cry. They don't quote Wall Street CEOs. And Wall Street CEOs are still saying, inflation could happen. Yeah, inflation could happen. Inflation's been happening since we had the Fed. What are you talking about? Of course, inflation will happen. But is it something that people should be freaking out over? If you look at the chart, if you believe what the Democrats were telling you, they made you sell at the lowest point. You lost value on your money. In the beginning of the year, you saw it. It was like this. And then in the middle, when they was creating all this hysteria in April, May, you saw the market go down. If you sold during the time the liberal media told you to sell, you lost money. If you bought where Donald Trump told you to buy, hey, the economy's going to go up, guys. Don't panic. Because Donald Trump is probably looking at it from a long-term point of view. These day traders are looking at it in weeks. I look at decades. I'm in it for the long haul. If I put money in a stock, I'm not touching that until retirement. I mostly invest in index funds, but I have some individual stock. This is how most investors should do. But it's almost like Wall Street traders has become more so like gambling with an education than actual investment. Investment used to mean you believe in something in the long term. Now investment means you believe in it for a month and then you get out. But I digress. I think this hearing from Jerome Powell will be insightful. Some people are calling for his resignation, and I'm gonna show you a little clip here, and let's see how it all turns out.
Make certain I understand this correctly. Control inflation and maximize employment. That's it. Two things, correct?
Yes.
So let's take one at a time. Maximize employment. Do you care if every American makes minimum wage or makes a livable wage? Is that something that factors into your thought process? In other words, if we have full employment, but most Americans are on substandard wages. Does that change your calculus?
Does it change my what?
Calculus. Does it? You can't. In other words, is it full employment is full employment? Every American has a job, but they're making minimum wage versus having a family-sustaining wage. Does that matter to the Federal Reserve?
It would matter to the country a lot.
I'm saying, does it matter to the Federal Reserve when you're making your decision?
Honestly, we don't really have the tools to affect that.
Right. So it doesn't factor in. Now that's different than us. The people of this country elect us to make certain that their wages are higher than inflation. And by the way, let the records show that real wages are up this year. So we've done that, not the Federal Reserve. Second piece of it is, let's talk about inflation first.
Well, we've helped control inflation, which is part of that.
We're going to jump right into the inflation conversation. There's different kinds of inflation. There's different causes. There's not witnesses to inflation. There's key actors to inflation. Would you agree?
Sure.
Okay. So let's talk about the actors. Did you comment during COVID lockdowns that was a bad idea, meaning that you're shutting down the entire economy? It's not a button. I hit the button, you can hear me. It's on and off. COVID wasn't that. We just shut down the economy. Any comments on that?
Of course not.
Okay, so you didn't comment on that. Vaccine mandates, something that my Democrat colleagues loved. If you don't get the vaccine, you're a terrible human being. You can't go to work. In fact, Joe Biden was...
And I love the timeline he's laying out there, right? Because you're supposed to be like, this is what I'm talking about. When these liberal like panelists, I think Abby Phillips, I remember I reacted to a video or I saw a video somewhere where Abby Phillips was saying that, oh no, Jerome Powell has to follow the facts. And the fact says that he can't cut rates. And I'm like, what facts is she looking at? Like, the fact is Trump's job numbers beat expectations. The inflation was lower than expected. 2 months in a row, I believe, the time of me reacting to that video. And I'm like, what's she talking about? She wants him to infer, like, this is bias. Bias is playing a play in his calculus here. He's not just looking at the numbers. His interpretation, his perception of the numbers is, does it prove a conclusion that I have, or it doesn't prove a conclusion that I have? And he's doing this out of ego because remember before Trump, when Trump was thinking about implementing the tariffs and his calls for tariffs, he was warning that inflation, these tariffs that Trump is thinking about, it will cause inflation. And so far, none of the data reflects what Jerome Powell thought would happen if Trump implemented inflation. In my view, I think it's a pride thing going on with Jerome Powell, is that he's waiting to see until something fit his conclusions. Then he's going to jump on it. Oh, I can't raise rates because, look, inflation came in higher than expected. It don't matter what happened in the last 4 months, that inflation came lower than expected. But the one time it goes over expectation, you're going to hear him cite that and be like, oh, this is the reason I can't do it. But right now, he's just like, we're going to take a wait and see approach. What are you waiting for? Trump is consistently hitting the number you're looking for. Jobs are coming up higher than expected. Real wages has grown, according to Mr. Moreno here. So what's holding you back? And many people believe it's due to political bias, pride, ego. Who knows? But I don't think seeing how he behaved himself during Biden administration, you cut interest rates by half, like I think 50 percentage points, which is 0.5%, right before the election for Joe Biden. People saw that as a political move. But Jerome Powell want to sit here and pretend he's not being political when you're observing his actions. So you had nothing to say. You were quiet as a mouse during the political actions being taken by our government during 2020 to 2024. But now, when Trump's in office, you're very vocal. You're very willing to speak up and criticize the economic approach of the current president when that wasn't your MO last administration. And this is the inconsistencies that points to bias here. But I digress. Let's continue with the clip.
Was overruled by the Supreme Court because he said that if you work in a company with more than 100 employees and you don't get vaccinated, the company has the ability to fire you, unless you prove that you're negative on COVID. That obviously is a supply chain shock, wouldn't you agree? If I'm running an assembly line and now I have to put my people 6 feet apart and now I have people quitting or not coming to work or I have to fire them, that's a supply chain shock, wouldn't you agree?
I mean, it's a medical thing that you
No, but
take.
it's a supply chain shock.
George
I'm
Washington
not asking you to make a medical decision. I'm asking you to make a Fed decision on inflation.
way outside anything we would comment.
But it affects inflation because supply.
It didn't, in fact.
Are you saying that supply
Didn't.
chain shocks don't affect inflation?
They do, but that
Okay,
one
they do.
didn't.
So that's clearly one. If you ban
And this is why I believe you learn more through debate than you learn just from someone that's sitting here explaining something to you from their perspective. Because two perspectives have to clash. And in the middle, in that clash, you find the truth there, right? And this is my problem with mainstream media being overwhelmingly dominated by liberals. There's no truth in it. Jerome Powell just sit here trying to argue that supply chain issues does not affect the economy, when the actions being taken, the way that we reacted to COVID was going to cause supply chain issues. And this is the kind of mental gymnastics that I'm starting to observe from Jerome Powell, is that on one hand, Joe Biden had the highest inflation rate in 40 years. You cut rates. You cut rates during that year that he had the highest inflation rate in 40 years. In 2022, you cut rates. You cut it rates slowly, and then next year, it'll be like 2 months, no inflation, and Jerome Powell will be like, all right, we can cut rates now. And then right after he cuts rates, it went right back up again. And he's like, oh, we got to chill now. But Donald Trump, lowest inflation rate in 4 years, right? You don't want to cut rates for him. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. One president, you cut rates after he had a year where he had the highest inflation rate in 40 years. You cut rates. Current president has the lowest inflation rate in 4 years. Don't want to cut rates. Make it make sense.
the export of liquid natural gas, which is going to cause the commodity price to go up, would that supply shock not also cause inflation?
Potentially could.
Yeah. So, and now the ranking member loves to talk about billionaire corporations, that are going to get away with paying taxes, right? Who pays corporate taxes? Like, who pays it? Is it like some obscure Wizard of Oz character behind the curtain that is a corporate entity that pays taxes? Who pays taxes?
I mean, ultimately, it's shareholders and customers.
So I'm going to read you a line. You tell me this is accurate. On taxes, it's not possible to know in advance precisely how the costs will be shared for taxes. I added
Correct.
that.
I would
But
agree.
it is highly likely that consumers will pay a meaningful share. Meaning, if the ranking member has her way, let's just tax corporations at 100%. Why not? Be fantastic, right? Oh, nobody would want to start a company, but that aside, that cost would be added to consumer products, correct?
A tax or a tariff? What are you talking about now?
The income tax for American corporations.
It's the same stuff. It's the same thing. A tariff is just a tax on imports. It's the same thing. It don't matter. It's no differentiator there. It's the same thing. They meaningfully do the same thing.
Goes up, they will share that tax burden with their consumers. True or false?
The reason why he wanted a differentiator is so that he can project a different kind of belief about the said thing. It's like optics, right? Is an example I do. If a black person do something, let's say a black person call a white person the C word, someone says that's not racist. But if a white person call a black person the N word, that's racist. He wants to react to it differently based on what it is superficially. But reality, it does the same thing. They're doing the same thing. This is what he's trying to do with the tariff and tax. Tariff and tax are the same thing. It's just meaning different things. If I say tariff, imported goods. Taxes on imported goods. Taxes, that's applied in general in the country.
Yeah, ultimately.
Yeah. So then taxes do raise inflation, but you don't comment on.
I mean, they haven't.
And
though.
you
It's
don't.
just-
But
that's
you
just
don't.
not true. I mean,
I got
empirically, it's not true.
The chairman's.
Empirically, that's not true. Empirically, that's not true. Can you not make the same argument for tariffs? Now, tariffs is more nuanced, right? Okay, you tax something at goods. Oh, they're going to pass the cost on to the consumers. That's necessarily not true. Historical evidence has not proven that. Either you're going to eat the cost as a company, right? Walmart tried to do this. Oh, we're going to have to increase our prices, and Donald Trump came down on them. Like, what are you talking about? You need to eat the cost because they know what's going to happen. Oh, you trying to pass the thing to consumers? If consumers have the option, they're going to go somewhere else. This is why energy is more inflationary than other things, because there's less competitors, there's less suppliers of that product. But if it's a material or product that can be supplied by other companies, consumers will change their behavior. Therefore, inflation won't increase for those products because the people know, the supplier knows if there's other competitors that won't pass the tariffs onto the prices of the consumers. They know consumers are going to gravitate towards them. So they have to compete. They have to match the price point still. That's why inflation is not necessarily true with tariffs.
You're going to beat me up in 56 seconds. So, but you sent me a very nice letter, which I appreciate. And it says the Federal Reserve plays no role in commenting on trade policy. So you don't comment on supply shocks. You don't comment on tax policy, which clearly affects inflation. You don't comment on demand pull. You just said now that we should forgive student debt. Why is a person that goes to Harvard, that gets a gender studies major, pays Harvard obscene amounts of money because professors are grossly overpaid there, is that person better than a working class Ohioan that is a plumber but can't afford a car because interest rates are too high and car prices have gone up? Why is that person? Why don't we forgive that person's car loan instead of forgiving their student loan? But you don't comment on that. You comment on tariffs. So I'm going to just show you.
I don't comment on tariffs at all, actually. I comment on
only
inflation.
commented on tariffs. You've
I'm
only
not commenting on the
tariffs.
wisdom of tariffs.
Look,
You didn't argue inflation until it became about tariffs. This is the disingenuousness I'm talking about. Because I remember on this channel, I remember in 2022, 2023, when Joe Biden was talking about forgiving student loans, I talked about how his current program of forgiving student loans contributed 23% towards inflation. Student loan forgiveness contributed 23% towards inflation. This is one of the reasons why in 2022 he had the highest inflation rate in 40 years. Where was the commentary on that? Where was the warning about that? And this is the problem this is why many people are calling for his resignation. I'm just saying.
the chairman's over there in the conversations. I'm going to show you a chart here. This is car prices.
I'm
This
paying
is-
attention,
this
however.
is- This is car prices since this year. Car prices are down. Car prices are down. Inflation in America is down. We got elected by millions of voters. You got elected by one person. He doesn't want you to be in that job. And you are costing this government $400 billion a year by refusing to lower interest rates. Nobody in this chamber has that kind of power to have a $400 billion impact on this economy, on our deficit. And I just think that you should consider whether you're really looking at this from a fiscal lens or a political lens, because you just don't like tariffs.
Yeah, I agree. You don't like the approach, and then now you're trying to find evidence to support your argument for why you shouldn't help the person with their approach. Because he knows if he cuts rates, this economy is going to be booming. But he don't like the way that Trump went about it. And this is what I'm talking about. Is he really looking at the data, or is his bias playing a part into that? Let me know in the comment section what you guys think. I think it's his political bias. I think it's ego. Oh, I said that tariffs was going to increase inflation. Watch, 4 months later, it still hasn't come to fruition. And now there's pressure for him to cut rates. He's thinking about cutting rates in July now. When he said, "Oh, I don't think we'll be able to cut rates this year," now he's changing his tune. Now he's committed to two rate cuts, I think, for the year. Maybe is in discussion, right? He's so hesitant to do anything because he believes that he's helping Trump, and he might be a liberal. Actually, he is a liberal based on the probability, based on the odds. The odds are in my favor that I'm guessing it right. That he's a Democrat, he's a liberal, and he doesn't want to help Trump necessarily. But I digress. This is why Trump want him out. Because he's doing more damage to the agenda than good. He's not playing along. He's not being a good partner. He's not actually helping us. He's not supplying us with any insight that actually will make the economy better for the American people. He's just using his position to push out a worldview that he believes in. And he thinks that, Donald Trump's doing it wrong, but all the data saying that Donald Trump's doing something right. And he hates that. He can't stand that the reality isn't matching his conclusion of the case, his theory of the case. Jerome Powell had a theory about how the economy would go, and his theory was proven wrong by reality. And instead of adjusting to that, he's doubling down, tripling down that, we shouldn't cut anything. Make it make sense. I think he should resign, honestly. But, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll be interested to hear what you have to say. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Please share this video if you're so inclined. It really does help me on the algorithm. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.